I had the privilege of serving our nation as our 16th president, I thought that I would share with you 16 precedents. That is, 16 ways in which I strove to lead our nation and our people in my day, and in particular during my presidency. My first precedent, or principle, is know your principles and stick to them. Over the next several years, this movement slowly gained strength, culminating in my election as president in the fall of 1860. In that campaign, we had been perfectly clear about our position. We would not interfere with slavery in those southern states where it already existed. The Constitution gave us no authority to do so. But we would fight against the spread of slavery into new areas in the West and the North. Therefore, as I prepared to take office, my most basic principle was opposition to slavery extension. The 4 months between the election and my inauguration were exceedingly tense. As some of the southern states began to threaten disunion and perhaps even civil war, many in the North began vacillating, saying we must, once again, appease the South. I feared that all our progress was about to be undone, all our labor to be sacrificed. I wrote a private letter to my friend and colleague, Illinois Senator Lyman Trumbull. My dear sir, let there be no compromise on the question of extending slavery. If there be, all our labor is lost, and ere long must be done again. The dangerous ground, that into which some of our friends have a hankering to run, is popular sovereignty. Have none of it. Stand firm. The tug has to come, and better now than any time hereafter. My fourth precedent, or principle, is recruit a great team. One of my first tasks once I had been elected president was to form my cabinet, the 7 men who would head up the various departments of my administration. You might recall that when the National Republican Convention took place in Chicago in May 1860, I was not one of the leading candidates. Everyone expected that William Seward of New York would be our nominee, and if for some reason it wasn't him, well, there were Salmon Chase of Ohio, Edward Bates of Missouri, or Simon Cameron of Pennsylvania, along with a number of other candidates. In the end, I was nominated on 3rd ballot, with Hannibal Hamlin of Maine as my running mate. After I was elected president that fall, I got to work on forming my cabinet. I thought about who could best help me in the various departments, and I thought of Seward, and Chase, and Bates, and Cameron, and others of my rivals for the nomination. It was a long and complicated process, but in the end, Seward agreed to be my Secretary of State, Chase my Secretary of the Treasury, Bates my Attorney General, Cameron my Secretary of War, Gideon Wells of Connecticut my Secretary of the Navy, Caleb Smith of Indiana my Secretary of the Interior, and Montgomery Blair of Maryland, and of the politically powerful Blair family, my Postmaster General. They were powerful men, leading statesmen, and politically well-connected with large followings. Every single one probably considered himself my superior, and in terms of political influence, most certainly were. As a result, they might prove difficult to manage, but I believe that they were the best men for the great tasks and challenges facing us, and therefore I wanted them on my team. My next precedent or principle is related to the previous one, for although my cabinet was a great team, it was not a team marked by uniformity, by all being always in agreement. In fact, it was just the opposite. My fifth precedent or principle is solicit and consider a diversity of opinions. Many of my cabinet members objected to the inclusion of others of the members in the cabinet. It was notably inharmonious at times, but I didn't mind this. I wanted to hear different points of view to weigh competing ideas in order to come to the wisest, most judicious decision. This decision would often be a compromise. My 10th precedent or principle is related to the previous one about knowing your weakness. It is acknowledge your mistakes and learn from them. I wrote the following letter to General Grant after the fall of Vicksburg. My dear General, I do not remember that you and I have ever met personally. I write this now as a grateful acknowledgement for the almost inestimable service you have done the country. I wish to say a word further. When you first reached the vicinity of Vicksburg, I thought you should do what you finally did, march the troops across the neck, run the batteries with the transports, and thus go below. And I never had any faith except the general hope that you knew better than I that the Yazoo Pass expedition and the like could succeed. When you got below and took Port Gibson, Grand Gulf and the vicinity, I thought you should go down the river and join General Banks. And when you turned northward, east of the Big Black, I feared it was a mistake. I now wish to make the personal acknowledgement that you were right and I was wrong. My 16th and final precedent or principle is, put the cause before your personal ambitions and personal feelings. If a political leader's primary concern is himself and his own ambition, he will find it difficult to truly serve the people he has been elected to serve. He will find it difficult to cast a vision which will unite the people and move the nation forward. You are, I assume, somewhat familiar with my Gettysburg Address. As I laid out my vision for our country in that address, putting the Civil War in the context of our nation's past, present, and possible future, how many times do you suppose that I used the words I, me, or my? Not a single time. No, instead I used the words we, us, and our 15 times. It wasn't about me. It was about us as a nation and as a people. Well, there you have it. 16 precedents or principles from the 16th president. I'll repeat them one more time. And number 1, know your principles and stick to them. Number 2, be flexible on non-essential points. Number 3, change with the times if the change is justified. And number 4, recruit a great team. Number 5, solicit and consider a diversity of opinions. Number 6, communicate effectively, including setting the vision. Number 7, stay in touch with subordinates and clients. Number 8, share the credit for success and take the blame for failure. Number 9, be aware of your own weaknesses. Number 10, acknowledge your mistakes and learn from them, and in general, always be learning. Number 11, be fair and equitable. Number 12, be honest. Number 13, stay in control of your emotions. Number 14, be guided by empathy. Number 15, whenever possible, persuade rather than dictate or coerce. And number 16, put the cause before your personal ambitions and personal feelings. Be humble.